Hello, everyone, and welcome to Full-on, your Fulham-centric football podcast. I'm your host, Ash Woolford. Joining me this week are my co-hosts, Drew. How you doing, Drew?
Doing well, my friend.
And Mozza. How you doing, Mozza?
I'm ecstatic.
It's obviously our job to review yesterday's game at home to Villa. It's a difficult one to review. I think we went into this game a little bit optimistic, even though we were expecting a hard game. But what we saw was nothing short of diabolical. I think it's one of those games where, when you consider the performance away at Man City 2 weeks ago, night and day compared to what we saw yesterday. I was very disappointed with what we saw. Um, we look at the starting lineup. It's pretty much as expected, with injuries that were available, and with Sasa Lukic being gone and stuff like that. Drew, were you surprised at all with the starting lineup yesterday? Was it what you expected?
Yeah, well, anyone that watched our preview show knows I called it. So, Silva's got his team, and he'll play his team. I mean, if Lukic had been fit, Lukic would have started, and that would have been probably, in Silva's mind, his strongest lineup.
We started the game pretty well, I think. The first sort of 5-6 minutes of the game, obviously we held our own. We scored a really good goal. It's nice for us to change it up a little bit. Leno kicking it long, and then Rail showing some good strength to get onto the end of the ball, and then sort of almost scuffing a shot that helped it go in. Mozza, what do you think of the goal? Was it taken well? How'd you feel about it?
Yeah, I thought it was a good goal. I'm surprised. Sorry if I've got this wrong from what you just said, where he scuffed it. I might have missed that because I thought he controlled it quite well and brought it down. And yeah, as soon as it went in, I was like, yes, he's back. Has that international break helped him? Where I think he scored there as well for his own team. But yeah, I thought it was good, fairly good goal. Yeah, very pleasing. And it was early on.
Yeah, I think that for me, I think he just slightly mishit it, but I'm not going to complain that he did, because obviously it's probably the reason why it went in. It was a well taken goal. We took a lead that I think we were okay with, and then 4 minutes later, Villa managed to get level with what I can only really describe as one of the biggest deflections I've seen in a long time. I don't think Rodgers' shot was even going on target before it hit the Fulham man and went in. It's really disappointing to be 1-1. At that time, Drew, were you disappointed that we were back at 1-1? Was it just one of those things that happens in football?
Well, yeah, we started quite well. I mean, the thing that Villa hadn't really got going. I think it was their first actual, shot. It wasn't so much the deflection. I mean, we saw it happen last week against Man City. What really upset me was our response to it. It was we just seemed to completely it knocked us out of our stride, because Villa didn't start well. I mean, the goal, you've already mentioned the goal that we scored. I mean, from a Villa point of view, that was a disaster. I mean, it was just a straight down the throat ball, and Jimenez showed great strength and picked his spot, and Fulham are 1-0 up. Villa get a lucky break, got them back to 1-1, which they didn't deserve. But you have to say, from then on, Villa managed the game much better than we did. And I was very disappointed with how he responded. Very disappointed. I'm not quite sure what happened there.
Yeah, I think it was a really, really poor. It was a poor reaction for them coming level, and I think mentality was a real issue for me yesterday within the game. We'll get to that more once we sort of go into further in the game. For the next sort of 15 minutes of the game after Villa drew, I thought Villa really, really came into the game, and we looked like we'd seen a ghost, and we weren't quite sure what to do. And then when we eventually sort of started finding our stride again, we obviously had that attack where we get the penalty, obviously not given, a VAR overturning and making the ref go check it. As soft as or as harsh as Villa fans may feel it was, it's one of those ones that, if you're the attacking team, you're expecting to get those because his hand's not in the natural position. But this is where I think our game completely capitulated. Is from that moment the penalty was actually given. We saw yet another argument between Raul and Pereira about who's going to take the penalty. But I think Pereira obviously being assigned the penalty taker by Marco Silva, takes I can only describe as one of the worst penalties I've ever seen. It is shockingly poor for a man who stutters his run up so much. You only do that if you're waiting for a keeper to commit, and then for you slot it away. But it was so poorly taken. It was an easy save for Martinez, and I think pretty much from there we just completely lost it. Mozza, obviously going up to the penalty and the penalty miss. You sent us a message in your group chat yesterday about how you felt while that penalty was being taken. I had no confidence he was scoring as soon as I saw he was taking it, but sort of how did you feel?
Yeah, I don't think anyone had any confidence, and apologies if I've said this before on our previous shows, but my feelings towards these, whatever the right nomenclature is for these sort of stuttery charge up penalties, I've hated them. I've always hated them. They've become quite fashionable in the last 10, 15 years. For me, I just feel like if you're going to take a penalty, just go right through it, have some backbone. I think, yeah, there was an absolute loss of confidence anyway in having Pereira step up to take it. But I think it's even more embarrassing when you do the stutter in the run up to kicking the ball and to, completely mess it up like that. I mean, I'm trying to look for anything positive about it. It was on target, but it was just so weak. And I didn't actually know that there was a disagreement, as you said, between him and Raul beforehand, because, as far as I was aware, he is the designated taker. So I would like to try and wonder what that was about a bit more. But
it was only minor. To be fair, Mozza, it was only minor. It wasn't like the one at Forest away when they had a proper argument about it. Raul had the ball in his hand, and then he just went over and took it off of him. But for me, I'm getting slightly annoyed about the fact that it seems to be, it's what Marco wants, so that's how it's going to be. That if we have a set piece, no matter where it is, he's taking it. He's taking a good free kick in the 2 years he's played for the club. That's a really crap penalty. His corners have got okay, but they're not great. But it really frustrates me. Drew, how does it frustrate you that he's on every single set piece, or is it just because he's the only one who on the pitch who's good at them? Like, what is it?
Well, I disagree. I disagree on a couple of points. The first thing about the disagreement between Raul and AP about who's going to take the penalty kick. With Mozza on this, there might have been a discussion, but Silva's allocated AP as a designated penalty taker. There's nothing I've seen throughout all my time watching Raul Jimenez that tells me he's anything other than a professional. That's what the manager wants, and that's what he does. Going on to your other point about as the only one that can take a free kick, anyone that saw Jimenez during the international break, he scored an absolute worldie of a free kick. I don't want to speak out of turn here, Ash, but I just like to read the interactions between us, the three of us, yesterday in our WhatsApp group chat, because this pretty much sums up everything that we can say about the game. Ash, you said I didn't get out of my seat when AP took because you weren't expecting them to score. I said straight after the penalty, he managed to give the ball away twice in the same passage of play. And that was basically it. Mozza was just completely stone-faced loving and sent a picture of him like a sphinx. Yeah? I was sitting in the JH, and I swear with God as my witness, not one person around me was expecting Pereira to score. Not one person around me was expecting Pereira to score. Now, I adore Silva. I think he's the big. I've said on publicly, Silva's the biggest asset we have. And you can Anderson, Iwobi, you can go through them. It all comes back to Silva. Oh, yeah. For the life of me, I do not understand this Pereira fixation. I just don't. I'm sorry. I mean, I know, Ash, we're going to get onto the man of the match later, but anyone that says it wasn't Jimenez is just simply wrong and doesn't know anything about football. When you've got one of the hottest strikers in the league and a designated penalty taker for his country, why aren't you letting him take the penalties? Why aren't you letting him take the penalties? The penalty for me was a momentum changer because, Ash, as you've already pointed out, Villa were in the ascendancy. And for any Villans watching this, Villa completely deserved to win. What annoys me is that penalty gave us an opportunity to dent their ascendancy and burst their confidence bubble.
Yeah.
And it completely changed the momentum of the game. And if you remember, just before half-time, they missed an absolutely open goal when I can't remember who it was, but he made it on the half volley and managed to hit.
Oh, Rodgers. It was
Rodgers, sorry.
Yeah.
Managed to hit the Hammersmith end. I just there are no words. There are no. I like I said, I think Silva's fantastic, but for the life of me, I just can't see this Pereira fixation. I just don't get it.
Yeah. We're going to talk some more about Pereira because obviously something massive happens in the second half that I feel like we have to mention. So, but we'll get to that when we come to that.
Sorry,
obviously, the rest of the that's fine. No, the rest of the first half, other than that last minute chance that Villa had, that Rodgers basically missed an open goal. He should have scored. It was pretty much, stalemate. It wasn't really much going on. It was a lot of, us losing the ball in midfield, Villa losing the ball as soon as he got to the defence, and then us losing the ball in midfield. And it basically yesterday, especially in the end of that first half, I genuinely think that Sander Berg made more tackles of Fulham players than he did Villa players in that first half. There was an awful lot of players getting in each other's way, poor passing. Like it was really, really frustrating. To watch as a fan, it was one of the most frustrating halves of football I've seen Fulham play since Scott Parker was manager. And I hate saying that, especially around Marco Silva, but it was mainly because it just felt like it felt like there was tired legs, there was tired heads. It almost felt like there was an awful lot of times when there was a bit of confusion about what we should be doing, where players should be going. There was an awful lot of split issues. I think Traore yesterday, as much we did something really good in the first half that for some unknown reason we stopped doing in the second, where every time Villa had a corner or a set piece, we stuck Traore on the halfway line because it automatically took two of their players out of the box. The second half we weren't doing that. It confuses me why we didn't do that. But that was the end of the first half. Other than that missed Triller chance, not loads happened. Going into the second half, the first sort of 5-10 minutes of that second half, I thought we did all right. We looked like we were pressing. We got a couple of corners. We looked okay, and then it all just fell apart again. I don't really know what happened. Villa got their second goal from the third consecutive corner they'd had in a row. To be fair, Ollie Watkins, it's a great header. It's a great header, and he does what Ollie Watkins does. He scores good goals. And then probably one of the more controversial points that people are going to talk to, but I don't think it's that controversial, which is the Anderson sending off. Mozza, what were your sort of views on the sending off? Do you agree with it? Do you not agree with it? Like, how do you feel?
I still don't know, to be quite honest. As they say, dem the rules. Like, it was the last man. I don't think it was a malicious challenge. I don't think there was a lot of intent there to knock him off the ball, and he got a foot to the ball, but he's gone down, and it's a red card, and we'll get to the other one, because there was a parallel there with Villa at the very end of the game as well. And again, I think even that was soft, but I don't ref the games, but for me, if anything, it's a yellow. But the rules are, if it's the last man, he comes down, it's a red. I do feel like that was harsh. And I don't fully know the rules. Is it like if it's a goal scoring opportunity, then for sure you're going to get sent off straight away? But I'm not completely sure it was, and I've seen it from various angles.
To be fair,
I don't know what you guys feel about it, but I'm aware I'm very biased as well.
To be fair,
Go on.
Mozza, as soon as the ref gives the free kick, it's a sending off. He's last man. There's no Fulham man anywhere near him. My question is whether or not it's actually a foul.
That's my point, though.
I
agree.
I think it's more of a Anderson's just stronger than a Watkins. But
Yeah,
Drew, what do you feel about it? How did you feel about seeing it at the time?
In accordance with the law, I mean, he had to go. If you watch it, Anderson's left hand does come out and make contact with Watkins. Watkins is going to play the game. If I was supporting Villa, I wouldn't be, I wouldn't have any qualms about it at all, and I'd expect Watkins to do what he did. It was annoying, but it was inevitable, like you say, Ash. I mean, the law's quite clear. I thought it was quite telling because Silva came out straight after the game and said they weren't going to appeal it.
Yeah.
And bearing in mind, Silva's got the benefit of instant replay down in the dugout, so he'd already watched it by the time Anderson had walked off the field. Yeah, I don't have a problem with it being a red card. I'm annoyed, but the law's the law. It's just one of those things. It's just annoying that we lose arguably he is our leader at the back. Fortunately it's only for one game, but it was one of those things. It was one of those things.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I think it's one of those things where, as I say, as soon as the free kick is given, he's being sent off. Like he's last man by a clear distance. It's so frustrating because it's one of those ones where, not that it changed the game because I think the game had already swung by that point, but I think it's one of those that it put the nail in the bed because I didn't see us coming back from it because we already looked like we were really lethargic in the game. Then obviously because of the sending off, we make a couple of substitutions. We bring Issa Diop on to go into defence. We move Iwobi into the centre of the park, and we bring Reece Nelson on to go out wide. And then which is a move I'm actually quite happy with. I know that Drew, you quite like seeing Iwobi in the middle of the pitch. I think that his game improved from that point. He just got really unlucky, and then we obviously then concede the third goal, which is another massive deflection, a good save by Leno. It hits Diop and goes in. There's not really much any of them could do about it. It's another unlucky goal, and you look at that and you go, you're 3-1 down. You conceded to a massive deflection. You've missed a penalty. You've had an own goal which no one could see about, and you've had a slightly contentious red card, but I'm not contending it. And it's just not your day. What bothers me is what happens just after conceding that third goal, is when we then decide that we're going to make a couple more substitutions, and we take off. Well, obviously we took off before that third goal. Sorry, we took off Andreas Pereira. Now I was not happy with the way Andreas Pereira played yesterday, and I've not been happy with the way Andreas Pereira has played all season. But something really bothering to me happened on Saturday when he got subbed off, and that he was physically booed by a large section of Fulham fans in the game. Now, I only once in my whole life, like my 34 years of going to watch Fulham play, have ever lost my temper with one player when they've been sent off. And yesterday's performance was bad by Pereira, but it was not boo worthy. And I've got to put it out there that it's one of the weirdest things that you can do as a fan is boo a player as he walks off the pitch, because it doesn't help anyone, especially not the rest of the players on the pitch. It doesn't help him. Yes, you can be disgruntled by it. Just don't clap him off. Like, don't boo a player though. It's not practical. Like, it doesn't help anyone. Drew, I know, like, I'm asking you because obviously I know you've been going to football as long as I have. Probably longer. How do you feel about it? Yeah. How uncomfortable did it make you feel? How did it make you feel? Like,
I'll tell you what it did make me feel. It completely caught me by surprise because I didn't boo him off. I mean, I was saying to people around me that I didn't think he'd be subbed. So I'm happy to admit I'm completely wrong because I think Silva was just going to leave him there. But it caught me by surprise. It's a sort of reaction I'd expect somewhere like West Ham, where they're more fickle. it said to me a couple of things. Number one, maybe the makeup of the crowd is changing. Number two, maybe the dissatisfaction with Pereira generally runs deeper than we appreciate. Because you saw him against Man City, you saw him against West Ham last season away, where he practically ran the game, and that's the thing that's always frustrated me about Pereira. And I fully accept people say he's playing in a different position now to accommodate ESR, who we'll have to talk about because with the best will in the world. The best I can say about ESR yesterday was he was ineffective. That's the best I can say about him. But going back to Pereira, I totally agree with you, the sentiment. Yeah, he visibly looked knocked after he missed the penalty. I think that yes, he wasn't great yesterday, and by all accounts, if you read various people's opinions across Twitter and Fulham forums, he was probably our lowest graded player. But I'm totally with you. I mean, I find him frustrating as hell, but I didn't boo him because it doesn't help anyone. But it caught me off guard. It caught me off guard because you don't really see things like that at Craven Cottage. I mean, I've seen opposition players clapped off, when they've been absolutely stunning, like Henry and Vieira and people like that. But yeah, I agree with everything you say. I wasn't disheartened. I was surprised because I've never seen a Fulham. I've never seen a Fulham fans, home fans react like that. I can't remember. They've booed teams. I mean, I was there when we were like 91st in the league, boys. So, we let people in for free at home to Bury once, and we still only got about 1,000 people. So I've seen some proper dire, and I've seen teams booed, but not an individual player. I can't remember that. I genuinely can't. I agree with you though.
I'm not gonna lie. I think you put it. You bang on with the reaction to it. Pereira was shockingly poor yesterday, and there were other players that were also really poor yesterday, and we'll talk about those in a second, just after we wrap up the rest of the game. But don't boo players off. It doesn't help anyone. One of the things that everyone likes about Fulham is the fact that we're meant to be a friendly crowd, a friendlier crowd. We're not that sort of club. But also, who does that help? Who does that help? Because Pereira next week, we all know Pereira. He has those weeks where he plays really badly, and then a week later he's absolutely outstanding. We got to Everton away next week, and he could well be a difference maker in that game because he has been a couple of times. We've been away at Everton, right? We need to be careful. I understand everyone's dissatisfaction with his performance, but he was not the only one. And there was maybe one or two players yesterday out of the whole 11 or the 14, 15 players that actually came on the pitch who could walk off with their heads held high after that game. There wasn't many, and we'll talk about that in a second. Obviously, we'll finish the rest of the game off. For the remaining sort of 20, 25 minutes of the game, Fulham, we did our best to semi-look like we were attempting to get back into the game without really having much huff and puff. There was no real end product. We brought on Harry Wilson. We brought on Tom Cairney. Tom Cairney came on. He looked okay in the middle of the park, as much as I know Mozza's going to hate me saying that. Harry Wilson came on, put in 3 or 4 crap free kicks. Is the only thing I can describe. They were absolutely rubbish. But, as everyone around me yesterday in the back of the H4 found out, I didn't really credit anyone with any good crossing yesterday, to the point where I got told off for swearing about everyone's crossing yesterday while at the game. So we'll talk about that. We don't need to talk about that. Sorry, that is what that is. Obviously, Villa then had a man sent off in extra time. It's just accumulation of yellow cards. Yes, it was a bad tackle. Yes, it was a bad foul, but it was too little, too late. We were never looking at changing the game, and that's how the game ended. Before we sort of give a sort of man of the match, because we always like to do that, guys, I want to discuss some players performances yesterday that were really below par, and is it concerning? Should we be concerned about it? You said it yourself, Drew. ESR was one of those players. I cannot tell if it was maybe just because he looked a bit tired mentally, but he looked like he gave up as soon as the game went 2-1. There was one really surprising. There was one point in the game when we were 2-1 down when Kenny Tete busted a lung to get down the wing, and ESR was stood back in the right back position. That for me, sort of, I know he's probably tired at that point because he hasn't played that much football. Sort of summed up his game. You know, who do you think stands out yesterday as having games that were below par for them, or should be concerned about, Drew?
Well, you've mentioned ESR. I mean, I don't quite with ESR. I mean, those of our regular watchers will have heard me say that I thought because he'd had such a terrible time with injuries at Arsenal, it was going to take him time to get match fit. I mean, it was noticeable that in his first few appearances, he was getting to about 60 minutes, 70 minutes, and Silva was hooking him. He hasn't been away for the international break, so he's not got that excuse. I do wonder whether it was more psychological because, by all reports, and I'm not criticising him for this, he seems to be quite a shy lad. Yeah, he's not what you'd call alpha. That's just his personality. No problem with that at all. But he did seem to retreat within himself yesterday, and he was basically a passenger. I mean, if it hadn't been for Pereira, I think he would have probably drawn a lot more opprobrium than he did. He very disappointing. But then you look at the whole of the midfield. I mean, Berge. I mean, I like him, but I'm yet to be convinced he's a central defensive midfielder. I mean, the only thing you could say about him is that he hasn't played much football. So, and he's trying to force his way into a new team, but he wasn't great. And I thought, ironically enough, we looked better and more dynamic when Iwobi went into the centre. And I think, but players that didn't play well. I mean, you can go through it. Robinson's crossing, flipping out, that was non-existent. Traore had a quiet game, but I think the midfield three for me were the most disappointing for varying reasons. But yeah, I mean that's where we're at. That's where we're at.
Yeah, Mozza, I don't like to do it because I don't really want to be one of those. I don't want to be over negative at the time. But for you, were there any players other than sort of what's been mentioned that really stood out of being really below par yesterday?
Most of them, I think it's easier to pick out the people that may have honourable mentions, and as Drew alluded to earlier, who the obvious man of the matches. And it goes back to what we said earlier as well. I don't quite know what happened or what went wrong. I can't work it out. So I don't want to single anyone out and be overly negative. I think it was a bad day at the office, and I think we can all agree that that is quite clearly our worst performance of the season so far. Hope we can just move onwards and upwards and learn from it. I am now thinking though, like with the devil on one side of my shoulder going, if I really had to have a go at someone, who would it be? Berger didn't really do a lot for me, and I've always been a little bit worried that this side of him might have come out, because I heard like Burnley fans saying that he was useless. I think it's too easy to have a go at Diop for the own goal. He'd only been on moments, and that just seems really unlucky for that to happen to him. But Diop, still for me, like he has like a lot of work to do to sort of impress me still. He's in that kind of stage, excuse me, that Lukic was in when he joined, and I thought Lukic was a bit of a passenger, but over time he seemed to prove himself. Diop, for me, excuse me, I'm getting emotional and choked up. I'm not really frog in my throat. Excuse me. Diop, Diop is just in that stage where he's yet to show me like I really need to believe in him, and I'll leave it there before I start.
But don't you think with Diop, Mozza? I mean, Lukic had the excuse, and I appreciate the word excuse. He's doing a hell of a lot of heavy lifting there, because Lukic isn't an international player and he starts for Serbia. But Diop's got a lot more Premier League experience. And how old is he now? Is he 28 or something? I mean, Diop is what Diop is. Yeah, I don't think we're going to see a massive evolution, and I think it's telling that it was everyone when Anderson signed. because let's be honest, we were all very disappointed when we went down that year and we lost Anderson and we lost Areola and we lost Lookman. When Anderson re-signed, there was no one that I'm aware of that thought Diop was going to keep him out of the team.
Oh no, not at all.
Thought,
I mean,
no,
yeah,
exactly.
Like I will take Anderson over Diop any day of the week. You know, there's no question about that. But when he's being brought,
sorry, that's kind of my point.
Yeah,
I mean, Diop is what Diop was. Ashes, I totally agree with you about the own goal. I mean, that was just unfortunate, and all he was trying to do was defend, and he can't. It's not like he can just suddenly teleport out of the way. I mean, he didn't have a hope.
But, no, exactly, and that's my point, Drew. Like, I'm not having a go at him, but I mean, I think when he's being brought on like as a sub, like right near the end, like we all know in our hearts of hearts the game's over. It's sort of like, well, what much more is he going to do to help? So but I do empathise and I sympathise. Like it was unlucky that happened to him as well, within being on the pitch for a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I totally appreciate what you're saying.
I think realistically, it's hard to blame Diop. I think by the time Diop would come on, we'd already dropped, 4 or 5 players already dropped, 4 out of 10 performances, which doesn't really help. I tweeted myself yesterday after the game that, I thought I was being harsh. Even I was asking, was I being harsh with my reviews of some of the players and what I thought of them? Because, it is what it is. Let's finish this talking about the game, how we always do. Let's get our man of the matches in. Honourable mentions the man of the matches, because I want to try and be a little bit positive about the result yesterday. I know it's hard, and there is basically no positives to take out of the game yesterday. Drew, give us an honourable mention for someone and the man of the match. Although I feel like the man of the match is probably the easiest decision we're ever going to make from a Fulham game.
Honourable mention was a toss-up between Leno and Iwobi. Probably give it to Iwobi because of Ash. You've already alluded to when he got moved inside and had Kearney sitting deeper playing passes. We seemed just to have a little bit more urgency and thrust in our midfield. Man of the match has to be Jimenez. I thought he was the thing that struck me about Jimenez when we are talking about some of the players we're talking about is that even when it was quite obvious, for me the game was lost from the penalty. That was a turning point in the game for me, because Villa were in the ascendancy, things were going their way, and it was our opportunity to get back in front and burst their bubble, and we didn't. But Jimenez was a cut above everyone else. I mean, he was fantastic, and what stood out was his attitude. He never stopped running, and he always showed for the ball. I mean, people talk about Mitrovic being a target man. I thought Jimenez's hold-up play yesterday was exceptional. I mean, his touch, he looks like an international class player for me. He was head and shoulders above. But I will shout out Iwobi because he's another one. He never went missing. Full credit to him. He never went missing. And in the midfield where, a lot of them did, he didn't. And Leno, I mean, he saved us a couple of times. So yeah, that's where I'm at on it.
Yeah, Mozza, and yourself, mate. Honourable mention, a man of the match.
Yeah, I would have said Leno as well. He had a lot to deal with, and he did make some great saves. And as they always say with the goalkeeper, you're only as good as your back four. So he just had to play with the hand that he was dealt. Really, my man of the match. I was going to try and make a joke and go, "Oh, it's going to be Anthony Robinson," but I think we're all beyond the point of laughing now. But yeah, obviously Jimenez. But he did look like he was back to form, and I've seen a couple of people say this on Twitter and etc. He looked like the man he was before that awful injury he had when he was at Wolves. So Leno. I thought Tete as well. If I can do one more sort of like diet honourable mention, Tete I thought did some good things as well. By the look on Drew's face, I think he's horrified at me saying that, even though
no, not at all. This is just how I
thought he was quite the fan of the Flying Dutchman, as I call him. But
I got no problem with Kenny. No problem at all, Mozza.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's fair. Like, I think it's funny that we're all mentioning the same names. For me, honourable mentions for me would actually be between Leno and Kenny Tete. I did think Iwobi played all right. He improved so much more as soon as he went into the middle of the park. He was way more effective. But it was the 60, 70 minutes beforehand that, he was a bit hit and miss. Tete, I thought, played really, really well, considering the fact that Iwobi that Traore had another one of his sort of quiet games. He still kept bombing on. He still kept trying to be effective attack wise. He was still pretty solid defensively. Villa have got some really good attacking players, and I feel like he did a really good job there. But for me, I'll give my honourable mention to Leno, because yes, he conceded 3 goals yesterday. Other than the Watkins header, no keeper saving the first shot. He was going 5 yards wide before it hit the Fulham player. He'd committed and it'd already gone. That was it. And the own goal, he'd made the save. It's just a bit of unluck that there's a defender standing right in front of you once that happens and it hits him and goes beyond you. There's nothing you can do. For someone who played in goal and conceded a few of those when I was younger, they are frustrating as a goalkeeper. And, he gets a plus point as well because he's already got more assists than Andreas Pereira does this season from setting up Raul yesterday. So we'll go with that. And obviously, man of the match, there is only one man, and that is Raul Jimenez. I think he was outstanding yesterday. I think despite the fact that most of the people around him looked like they'd given up, he didn't stop running at all. His quality in the air was outstanding. He's finished as much as I thought he missed it. Was still a good finish. All the things he had to do yesterday, he did really well. It was just unfortunate for him that everybody else around him ghosted. And it is one of those things. It's not his fault that the 2 men charged with putting balls in the box couldn't cross a ballot paper. It's not his fault that, the 3 midfielders standing behind him are too busy tackling each other to get the ball up the field. It's one of those things that, he was a bright light yesterday. The rest of them probably have some thinking to do, because it's not the performances we need. We got a tough game coming up, with Everton next weekend. One we'll review during the week, and we'll preview to come out on Friday. But I think an awful lot needs to be done between now and Friday. We can go away now, obviously, put the game behind us and try to be a bit more positive when we come to review the game against Everton on Friday. But if we were doing that right now, I feel like that'd be a very negative, preview to do, because there wasn't many positives coming out of that game yesterday.
Well, they've just been to Ipswich and beaten them 2-0.
Yeah.
So it's not the right time to be playing them, in my view. But we are where we are.
Yeah. Obviously, we'll do that. We'll review that game later on in the week, and that'll come out on Friday. Thanks very much for joining us for this very somber review of the Aston Villa game. There wasn't many positives for us to talk about. Just like to congratulate all of us.
That was the best part of it.
Yeah, I'd like to congratulate all of us, because nobody used the C word during this episode, and it could have been done very easily. Thanks for joining me, Mozza. Thanks for joining me, Drew.
You're welcome, mate.
Please like and subscribe and share with your mates. Probably not this episode though, because it's not as positive.
We're usually more upbeat than this. That's why I'm wearing black.
Like and subscribe and share it though. Thanks very much for joining us. We'll see you on Friday for our Everton preview. Come on, you Whites.
Go on for them.